Hey guys, welcome to book club. Today we're reading chapter 4. I just want to try it out and see how long it takes to read each chapter. I think it's around 25 minutes. They're all around the same like length. They're all like 11 to 12 pages. So I want to do that just so it's more cut and dry like every time it's a chapter. Um, so coming to you real my greasy hair. My not quite awake eyes, and I moved my computer so like my mouth is like right by it, so I'm hoping that works better for you to hear. I'm sorry, I've got something stuck in my throat. Okay, number 4. You're too old to cry, but it hurts too much to laugh. Fear, sorry, fear makes come true that which one is afraid of. Viktor Frankl. So true. Okay, sorry. Just about everyone has heard of the Wright brothers, the bicycle mechanics who pioneered manned motorized flight in the first part of the 20th century. The circumstances surrounding Orville and Wilbur Wright's first flight on December 17, 1903, make an interesting story. It's certainly a story that illustrates how to fail forward. Sorry, I want to just see how long it takes. I'm going to just time myself. Stopwatch. Okay. But what you may not know is that prior to that day, the Wrights, unknowns with no university education, were not the leaders in aviation. They were obscure at best, and another man was expected to put the first airplane in the air. His name was Dr. Samuel P. Langley. He was a respected former professor of mathematics and astronomy who at that time was the director of the Smithsonian Institution. Langley was an accomplished thinker, scientist, and inventor. He had published several important works on aerodynamics, and he possessed a vision for achieving manned flight. In fact, in the mid to late 1890s, he had done extensive experiments with large unmanned plane models and had achieved a high degree of success. Commission to succeed. In 1898, Langley approached the U.S. War Department for funding to design and build an airplane to carry a man aloft, and the department gave him a commission of $50,000, a huge sum at that time. Langley went right to work. By 1901, he had successfully tested an unmanned gasoline-powered, heavier than air craft. It was the first in history. And when he enlisted the aid of Charles Manley, an engineer who built a powerful new lightweight engine based on the designs of Stephen Balzar, his success seemed inevitable. On October 8, 1903, Langley expected his years of work to come to fruition. As journalists and curious onlookers watched, Charles Manley, wearing a cork-lined jacket, strode across the deck of a modified houseboat and climbed into the pilot seat of a craft called the Great Aerodome. The full-sized motorized device was perched atop a specially built catapult designed to initiate the aerodome's flight into the air. But when they attempted the launch, part of the aerodome got caught and the biplane was flung into 16 feet of water, a mere 50 yards away from the boat. Criticism of Langley was brutal. For example, read this report in the New York Times. The ridiculous fiasco which attended the attempt at aerial navigation in the Langley flying machine was not unexpected. The flying machine, which will really fly, might be evolved by the combination and continuous efforts of mathematicians and mechanicians. Sorry, one sec. Mechanicians. That's an interesting word. In from 1 to 10 million years. No doubt the problem has its attractions it, for those it interests, but to ordinary men it would seem as if the effort might be employed more profitably. In the face of failure. At first, Langley didn't let that failure or the accompanying criticism deter him. 8 weeks later, in early December, he and Manley were ready to attempt flight again. They had made numerous modifications to the aerodrome, and once more Manley climbed into the cockpit from the houseboat's deck, ready to make history. But as before, disaster struck. This time, the cable supports to the wings snapped as the plane was launched. The craft caught again on the launch rail and it plunged into the river upside down. Manley nearly died. Again, the criticism was fierce. His great aerodrome was called Langley's Folly, and Langley himself was accused of wasting public funds. The New York Times commented, "We hope that Professor Langley will not put his substantial greatness as a scientist in further peril by continuing to waste his time and the money involved in further airship experiments." He didn't. Langley said afterward, "I have brought to a close the portion of the work which seems to be specially mine, the demonstration of the practicality of mechanical flight. For the next stage, which is the commercial and practical development of the idea, it is probable that the world may look to others." In other words, Langley had given up. Defeated and demoralized, he had abandoned his decades long pursuit of flight without ever having seen one of his planes piloted to success. Just days later, Orville and Wilbur Wright, uneducated, unknown, and unfunded, flew their plane Flyer 1 over the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Love that. So cool. It just goes to show you that you don't have to have everything, you don't have to know everything perfect to make something happen. You know. Two perspectives. Author J.I. Packer states, "A moment of conscious triumph makes one feel that after this nothing will really matter. A moment of realized disaster makes one feel that this is the end of everything. But neither feeling is realistic neither feeling is realistic, for neither event is really what it is felt to be." The Wright brothers did not rest on their success. The rush of achievement that day in December of 1903 did not make them think they had arrived. They continued experimenting and working, and eventually the public acknowledged their achievements. In contrast, Langley let his moment of disaster make him think it was the end. He abandoned his experiments. 2 years later, he suffered a stroke, and a year after that, he died. And today, while even young school children have heard of the Wright brothers, Langley is remembered only by relatively few aviation buffs. It's true, I never heard of him. When failure gets you by the heart. What happened in the life of Samuel Langley occurs in the lives of too many people today. They allow failure to get the better of them emotionally, and it stops them from achieving their dreams. Let's face it, failure can be very painful, sometimes physically and more often emotionally. Seeing part of your vision fall flat really hurts. And, hey Clara, I'm just reading right now, okay? You okay? You want to just sit by me? She gets scared in the morning sometimes. Did you see something scary? Yeah? But it wasn't really there? Yeah? You're safe now, okay? You're safe. If you want to go snuggle Daddy, you can. Or you could just stand here and listen to me read. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, I read that. And if people heap ridicule on top of your hurt feelings, you feel even worse. The first important step in weathering failure is learning not to personalize it, making sure you know that your failure does not make you a failure. But there's more to it than that. For many people, the pain of failure leads to fear of failure, and they become like the person who says, "I'm too old to cry, but it hurts too much to laugh." That's when people get stuck in the fear cycle. And if fear overcomes you, it's almost impossible to fail forward. I get stuck in the fear cycle. A cycle you don't want to ride. I've come a long way though, for sure. Take a look at what typically happens to someone who is unable to overcome the fear of failure and gets caught in the fear cycle. Prior negative experiences cause the person to develop a fear of failure that starts the cycle. For example, let's say someone experienced failure as a child trying to sell candy door to door to raise money for school. Later, as an adult, he is put in a situation that seems similar and fear strikes. Whether he is a salesperson with a need to make calls on customers or a pastor with a mission to visit people in their homes, that old childhood failure may generate fear. The fear of rejection creates inaction. Because the person doesn't act, he doesn't gain personal experience in that situation, which is the key to learning and overcoming future obstacles. The lack of experience breeds an inability to handle similar situations, and that ultimately feeds and increases the fear. The longer the fear remains unchecked, the harder a person has to work to break the cycle. I've totally experienced this. Fear of failure stops forward progress. The inaction that results when people are stuck in the fear cycle takes on many forms. Here are the three most common ones I've observed. Number one, paralysis. For some people, fear of failure brings about absolute paralysis. They stop trying to do anything that might lead to failure. President Harry S. Truman offered this opinion: the worst danger we face is the danger of being paralyzed by doubts and fears. This danger is brought on by those who abandon faith and sneer at hope. It is brought on by those who spread cynicism and distrust and try to blind us to the great chance to do good for all mankind. People whose fear paralyzes them give up any hope of moving forward. Oh, hi, bro.
Hi.
We got two visitors this morning. Come over here on this side.
One of the second.
The second visitor needs to go potty. Okay. This closet is very quickly getting very small. All right. You're so cute, Bug. You okay? You feeling a lot better?
I still don't know how to face my fear at night.
I know. It's really hard and scary, huh? Yeah.
I know how to face it in the morning.
Do It is morning, so that's good.
Oh, like in the middle of the day, but not like right in the morning.
Oh, okay. All right. Number two is procrastination. So number one was paralysis. Number two is procrastination. Other people maintain the hope of progress but never get around to following through. Can you close that door for me? Wake up, Daddy. Someone once called procrastination the fertilizer that makes difficulties grow. Victor Kiam stated it even more strongly. He called it opportunity's natural assassin. Procrastination steals a person's time, productivity, and potential. As President John F. Kennedy said, there are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far less than the long range risks and costs of comfortable inaction. Procrastination is too high a price to pay for fear of failure. That one gets me. I procrastinate a lot. You guys know what that means? You put off things that you don't want to do. Number three, purposelessness. Tom Peters, co author of In Search of Excellence, emphasizes that there's nothing more useless than someone who comes to the end of the day and congratulates himself, saying, well, I made it through the day without screwing up. Yet that's what many people who fear failure do. Rather than pursue worthy objectives, they avoid the pain of making mistakes. And in the midst of that transition, they lose sight of any sense of purpose that they might have once possessed. As fear of failure and the resulting inactivity compound, a person in the fear cycle exhibits additional negative side effects. My goodness, this is shocking to me. I feel like they are looking into my brain. What?
The first one, I actually do every single. I like.
I'm doing a recording right now. Here, I'm gonna let me pause it. Okay, so back to purposelessness. So it says a fear of failure and the resulting inactivity compound. A person in the fear cycle exhibits additional negative side effects. Self-pity. He feels sorry for himself, and as time goes on, he takes less responsibility for his inactivity and starts thinking of himself as a victim. Excuses. A person can fall down many times, but he won't be a failure until he says that somebody pushed him. In fact, the person who makes a mistake then offers an excuse for it, adds a second mistake to his first. A person can break out of the fear cycle only by taking personal responsibility for his inaction. Misused energy. Constant fear divides the mind and causes a person to lose focus. If he is going in too many directions at once, he doesn't get anywhere. It's comparable to stomping the gas pedal of a car that's in neutral. Hopelessness. If allowed to run that course, continual fear and inaction rob a person of hope. And poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow described the situation in this way: the setting of a great hope is like the setting of the sun. The brightness of our life is gone. Breaking the cycle. People who want to get out of the fear cycle often spend time feeling guilty for their inability to change. But one of the reasons they are stuck in the fear cycle is that they focus their energy on the wrong part of the cycle. Since they know that fear got the cycle going, they believe that they have to eliminate it to break the cycle. Yet most people are unable to do that. You can't avoid fear. No magic potion will take it away, and you can't wait for the motivation to get going. To conquer fear, you have to feel the fear and take action anyway. Several years ago, while I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room, I came across a few paragraphs in a medical magazine that describes the battle to act. We hear it almost every day. Sigh, sigh, sigh. I just can't get motivated to lose weight, test my blood sugar, etc. And we hear an equal number of sighs from diabetes educators who can't get their patients motivated to do the right thing for their diabetes and health. We have news for you. Motivation is not going to strike you like lightning. And motivation is not something that someone else, nurse, doctor, family member, can bestow or force on you. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. Forget motivation. Just do it. Exercise, lose weight, test your blood sugar, or whatever. Do it without motivation. And then guess what? After you start doing the thing, that's when the motivation comes and makes it easy for you to keep on doing it. Motivation is like love and happiness, it's a byproduct. When you're actively engaged in doing something, it sneaks up and zaps you when you least expect it. As Harvard psychologist Jerome Bruner says, you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than feel yourself into action. So act. Whatever it is you know you should do, do it. Get moving, build momentum, make mistakes, move on. Playwright George Bernard Shaw asserted, a life spent in making mistakes is not only more honorable but more useful than a life spent doing nothing. To overcome fear and break the cycle, you have to be willing to recognize that you will spend much of your life making mistakes. The bad news is that if you've been inactive for a long time, getting started is hard to do. The good news is that as soon as you start moving, it gets easier. If you can take action and keep making mistakes, you gain experience. That's why President Theodore Roosevelt said, "He who makes no mistakes makes no progress." That experience eventually brings competence, and you make fewer mistakes. As a result, your fear becomes less paralyzing. But the whole cycle breaking process starts with action. You must act your way into feeling, not wait for positive emotions to carry you forward. An African parable captures the idea very well. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows that it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning, a lion wakes up. It knows that it must outrun. Oh, no, that's right. Every morning, a lion wakes up. It knows that it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you had better be running. If you have always had a hard time failing forward, then you have to get yourself moving. It doesn't matter what has stopped you or how long you have been inactive. The only way to break the cycle is to face your fear and take action, even though it may seem small or insignificant. Even the best get stuck sometimes. Many unsuccessful people get stuck in the fear cycle, but the same thing happens to high achievers. For example, when you look at the life of the composer George Frederick Handel, you see a successful person who found himself in a rut that he needed desperately to break out of. Handel was a musical prodigy. Though his father wanted him to study law, he gravitated to music at an early age. By age 17, he held the post of church organist in the cathedral in Halle, his hometown. A year later, he became a violinist and harpsichordist at the Kaiser's Opera House in Hamburg. By age 21, he was a keyboard virtuoso. When he turned to composing, he gained immediate fame and soon was appointed Kapellmeister conductor to the Elector of Hanover, later King George I of England. When he moved to England, his renown grew. By the time he was 40, he was world famous. A reversal of fortune. Despite Handel's talent and fame, he faced considerable adversity. Competition with rival English composers was fierce. Audiences were fickle and sometimes didn't turn out for his performances, and he was frequently the victim of the changing political winds of the times. Several times he found himself penniless and on the verge of bankruptcy. The pain of rejection and failure was difficult to bear, especially following his previous success. Then his problems were compounded by failing health. He suffered a seizure or stroke, which left his right arm limp and caused him to lose the use of 4 fingers on his right hand. Although he recovered, he remained despondent. In 1741, Handel decided that it was time to retire, even though he was only 56. He was discouraged, miserable, and consumed with debt. He felt certain he would land in debtor's prison. On April 8th, he gave what he considered his farewell concert. Disappointed and filled with self-pity, he gave up the inspiration to move forward. But in August of that year, something incredible happened. A wealthy friend named Charles Jennings visited Handel and gave him a libretto based on the life of Christ. The work intrigued Handel enough to stir him to action. He began writing, and immediately the floodgates of inspiration opened in him. His cycle of inactivity was broken. For 21 days, he wrote almost nonstop. Then he spent another 2 days creating the orchestrations. In 24 days, he had completed the 260-page manuscript. He called the piece The Messiah. Got chills. Today, Handel's Messiah is considered a masterpiece and the culmination of the composer's work. In fact, Sir Newman Flower, one of Handel's biographers, said of the writing of Messiah, considering the immensity of the work and the short time involved, it will remain, perhaps forever, the greatest feat in the whole history of music composition. When it comes to getting over the emotional hurts of failure, it really doesn't matter how good or bad your personal history is. The only thing that matters is that you face your fear and get moving. Do that, and you give yourself the opportunity to learn how to fail forward. Wow, this chapter, my goodness. Take action and reduce your fear. So here's some questions. What objective essential to your success are you most afraid of tackling right now? Write what it is here. The only way to get going is to face that fear and act. Write down all your fears associated with that activity. Examine your list and accept the fact that you are afraid. Determine what first step you can take to get started on achieving that objective. It doesn't matter whether it's small or large, just do it. If you fail at it, do it again. Keep trying until you accomplish that first step. Then figure out what the next step is. Remember, it's almost impossible to feel your way into acting. You must act your way into feeling. The only way to get over the fear is to take action. Steps to failing forward. So here's the recap. Number 1, realize there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. Number 2, learn a new definition of failure. Number 3, remove the you from failure. And number 4, take action and reduce fear. Okay, it's time to take action. Y'all ready?